The problems of adolescence are much different than the problems of adulthood. And when teenagers turn to alcohol to cope with those pressures, sadly the effects of alcohol abuse can be much more severe than maybe it would be if they were grown adults. Here to explain more is Ed O'Reilly, Program Director of the Neil Kennedy Recovery Clinic in Dublin. Ed, it's nice to have you here.
Nice to be here, Gail.
And a topic of so much concern to so many parents, teenage drinking. And unfortunately, we call it binge drinking. And before we even discuss binge drinking, Ed, what is that explanation? What does binge drinking mean as opposed to, regular, what we say, teenage experimental drinking?
Binge drinking is basically defined as consuming multiple drinks in one sitting. It varies a little bit based upon age, body weight, whether you're a man or a woman. Mm-hmm. But if, for example, a young man consumed 3 to 4 drinks in one sitting, that would be considered binge drinking.
Got it.
And that's a federal statistic that they came up with, a rather precise amount, so they can track it and compare it across states and things like that. So it actually has a rather specific connotation, but the old-fashioned connotation still holds weight, which to my mind always was, you sit down, you drink a lot.
Yeah, right. Call it binge drinking, call it whatever you want. You're getting wasted.
Right, exactly.
And these kids are doing it and they don't know how to drink or how to handle it. And their bodies are still growing.
Yes, the main issue is that the prefrontal cortex, which is the fancy way of saying the control part of the brain,
yep,
right, still is developing. Mm-hmm. The impulsive part, well developed at an early age. Most people recognize that's part of the issue with teenagers, adolescents, is they're pretty good at being impulsive, less well developed at controlling things. And it's a particularly difficult combination with alcohol because alcohol tends to inhibit the controlling part of the brain anyway. So we have a bad combination here, which is a tendency on the part of young people to be impulsive in the first place, and then it's exacerbated if they consume alcohol.
That makes a lot of sense, and they lose their perception of all sorts of things.
Yes, they do, and they're much more likely to, there are recent statistics, for example, that show that among alcohol-related fatalities in underage drinkers, and this surprised me, I don't know about you, but only 30% are due to dying in automobile accidents, okay? 70% are due to what you might call misadventure, which is getting in bad situations and doing stupid things because you're drunk.
So they're not getting behind the wheel. That message is there.
Yes.
It's those other decisions that they're making, not behind the wheel, that are still affecting them.
Yes. Although, not to be minimized, there is still the 30%.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Which is obviously not good. But the surprising statistic is that if as parents tend to focus over much on the don't drink and drive, which is a valid message, then they're much more likely to get in fights, jump off hotel balconies into pools.
Yeah, and think it's a good idea.
Well,
what about parents' role in this? And parents, you've heard that they say, if they drink in my home and I'm watching them, that's the way I want them to learn how to handle alcohol. And you don't like that idea.
It has a superficial attraction. Okay. The problem is the research show that kids who are introduced to alcohol by their parents are more likely to drink more heavily later on.
Huh.
Okay. And so it's another one of these, well, I don't know, that kind of doesn't fit my common sense idea. But what happens is, sorry, it actually in the long run does not work out.
Because it's almost like they've been given permission to have alcohol.
It is like that.
Mm-hmm. And energy drinks and alcohol. Kids think this is the biggest buzz because they get buzz.
Yes.
And that's dangerous.
It is. Unfortunately, what happens is when you combine, in essence, stimulants, okay, which is the energy drinks and alcohol, you're still as drunk. But because you have some stimulants on board, you don't get sleepy and tired and lethargic. You're less likely to pass out, but you can still black out. When people black out, not the same thing as passing out, what happens is you're still up and moving around and seem reasonably alert, but you don't remember anything.
Wow. Because this is also scary, Ed, I know that there are ways that you can help and that you're a resource for parents. They should give you a call and even talk to you about, does my son or daughter have a problem?
Oh, absolutely. There's no problem whatsoever in calling up our center, and we have people can be available to discuss the situation. I will say that there are some very useful online resources, however, as well. Okay, Mothers Against Drunk Driving have a little pamphlet that you can download as a PDF file, which gives very good practical advice for having a conversation with your kids.
Well, we have that information on our website, and also your information there, Ed, so that people will have a resource. And we thank you so much for all this advice.
Thank you.
Thanks.